Welcome to Beyond the Reiki Gateway, a podcast reserved for the spiritually curious. Journey further with Reiki Masters Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy through in-depth conversations, many featuring inspiring and intriguing special guests to enrich your unique spiritual progression. It's Beyond the Reiki Gateway in 2023. I'm Andrea Kennedy here with my co-host Kathleen Johnson. We're excited to offer you a brand new episode in the montage format. You might recall the last time we did an episode in this format on Reiki Courage. This time around, we asked our guest to answer the question, what is a great spiritual lesson that you learned in your life that still influences who you are today? And how did you learn it? We hope some of their wisdom will help you in the coming year and beyond. That's what we hope we can do here at the podcast, offer you help along the way wherever your spiritual path leads you.
Thank you, Andrea, for that great intro. It's hard to believe we're in 2023 already, but here we are. And what a great way to start the year. And an even better way to start this episode is with a wonderful guest who we've had on before, Tina Zion.
The primary spiritual lesson that I've received is power means kindness, not thumping on other people. That power means very specific thoughts, intention, really realizing the power of our thinking mind. Because if your listeners would look around right now, wherever they're listening to this, if they look around in their environment, they're in that environment because our thoughts are very powerful. Our thoughts are things, they're electrical signals to the universe. And so even as I look around the room here, as I speak with you, my thoughts have created this room. My thoughts have created the office in my house. My thoughts have created that. So our thinking is very, very creative. So be very careful what you think. And if you want more positive in your life, we must think more positive. And so that's really the spiritual lesson or lessons that I would ask people to realize is that our thoughts are spiritual energy. The more careful we are with our thoughts and the more positive we are with our thoughts, the universe has to respond with whatever thought energy we put out to it. It's that matching what we put out in thought energy. The universe has to respond in likeness to it.
Andrea, first of all, I think Tina Zion is such a treasure. She really is. And her words resonated with me, especially what she said about kindness being power. I have been saying for years that kindness is a superpower. So it was almost as if she was reading my mind when she said that, because I truly believe that. It takes great strength to be kind, especially in a world that seems so harsh at times. And I think her words are heartfully said, and they hit me in all the feels. So what did you think?
Oh, I totally agree. One of my big clues in life is when something's difficult, it's probably the better choice. And as you said, in today's world, it is often the more difficult choice to express kindness than something else much more easily tapped into from a knee-jerk sort of reaction. So I love this reminder from her, and she is so wise. I loved what she shared.
So did I, and I really appreciate her sharing that with us and our audience.
Our next guest, Pam Allen-LeBlanc, is a Reiki master teacher and animal communicator, and she has a great story about how she learned a very important spiritual lesson that I think is really great advice.
The first thing that I learned early on is that if you want to learn something really well, teach it. Because in the process of teaching it to others and preparing to teach to others and continuing to teach to others, you propel your knowledge and your growth. It really encourages that continuous learning. And I love to be constantly learning. But as I was constantly learning, and this started with horses for me, there was a new way of doing things with horses. And I grew up with horses, but I was very drawn to natural horsemanship and some of the new ways of doing things that really took into account the horse's perspective and what they wanted to do. But it was very confusing for me because one person would say, do it this way. And another person would say, no, do it this way. And another person would say, don't listen to those two, do it this way. So I had a wonderful horse trainer. I usually train my own horses, but I had one horse that was a bigger challenge than what I could manage. I'm so grateful for going down and working with him because he gave me the best piece of advice ever. I asked him, Kevin, what do I do with all of those, who do I listen to? Who do you listen to? What do I do? The answer he gave me empowered me and really set me on the way that I do everything now. He said, Pam, how long have you been working with horses? And it was over 10 years ago now. So at that time, I had been working with horses for over 30 years. And he said, and you're an agricultural scientist. And he also was. And I said, yes, I am. And he said, Pam, you know what you're doing. He said, so what you do is you take the parts of the first guy's stuff that resonate with you and you throw away the rest. And then you take the parts of the second guy's stuff that resonate with you and you throw away the rest and you put it together with what you learned from the first guy. And then you take the third guy and you take the parts that make sense to you and you put that together and throw away the rest. And it's funny that I never thought of that on my own, but I love to tell people, even with my teachings, that I'm going to share my experiences with you, and some of it may resonate and some of it may not, and some of it may resonate later, but just take the parts that work for you and throw away the rest. Keep learning, keep growing, try different teachers, and then don't worry about those experiences or beliefs or exercises that don't really fit with you. Let them go and compile your own. So I just began learning as much as I could and just took the best parts of it and cobbled together my own way of doing things, which worked incredibly well.
I could really relate to Pam's story, Kathleen. I don't know about you, but for people like us and probably our listeners who are seekers and they like to read different books and explore different topics, there is a lot of different advice out there and it might be conflicting, but her practicality and the way she learned that lesson, I thought was really a good story.
Absolutely agree with you, Andrea. It is a good lesson because I know you're like me in many regards, and we're constantly, I guess, stretching ourselves and wanting to learn new things and read about different perspectives. And I think that's important. It shows a curiosity that serves us well. But at the same time, everything we learn is not going to resonate. It's not all going to feel right to us. So Pam's advice is perfect. You take what works, what resonates, if you will, and leave the rest. And it doesn't mean you may not pick it up later. Maybe somewhere down the line, it will resonate. But you just go along your path, take what resonates, and then keep moving. I think that's great advice for anybody on the path.
I think it brings it back to that inner guidance. I think I talk about it a lot, but when things resonate, there's a reason. And that is what's true for you and what melds or complements your own energy. And so absolutely what resonates, that is meaningful and impactful. And that's how we know what's true for us. So it all really fits together.
Our next guest is William Stillman, who you may remember as a gifted psychic medium who has been a guest on our show more than once and has a really unique perspective about a spiritual lesson.
Self-analysis, self-assessment, self-reflection. I think it is imperative. Listen, if we don't do it now while we're still here in human form, we're going to have to do it there. And when we do it there, it's called a life review. And I have had many people's loved ones who have passed over, including quite a few people who were not very nice people while they were here, talk about how humbling that process has been for them to essentially be seated in an empty movie theater while they roll film of scenes from your life. And you not only have to eat humble pie and eat crow and swallow a bitter pill for seeing how you behaved, you also experience the emotions of the people whom you have harmed and hurt. So my philosophy is, look, I don't like surprises. Let's get out ahead of it.
Yeah.
And evolve, and also maybe score a few spiritual points while we're still here, to be awake enough and aware enough to do it while you're still here. Now, listen, I don't recommend that people do this all in one sitting, because you're going to feel like you beat yourself to a bloody pulp and you're going to feel miserable. But it's a process. I think it's really important for us to reflect upon our life history to date and to try to call up and conjure all of the episodes we can recollect in which we did and said things that were unkind, that were hurtful, or just plain flat out mean-spirited, and reflect on that and atone for that. And most importantly, take responsibility, take personal responsibility for your past bad acts and misconduct, and own it, because now you know what you don't want to be. Now you know what you don't want to repeat. And for every memory that you can recall in which you behaved in a way that was unbecoming, I would also recommend that you recall a memory in which you were of good service to someone and did something that was good and kind and altruistic. Because people have a difficult time also giving themselves credit for having done things that were good. So let's even it out by also recalling the things that you did that were kind, that were helpful to other people without being asked to help, things that we did that were beneficial to strangers, to create that sense of balance. It's something we can do starting here and now, and start the ball rolling today. But take your time, go at your own pace, and it's a really good opportunity to cleanse and purge, but also to give yourself esteem and credit for being a good person, a good citizen, and for recognizing the things that you did that maybe you did anonymously, but you made a contribution to someone's life or to your community.
I love how he balanced that out, Kathleen, how we can get sort of a jump start on our reflection about how we're doing in this life. So to bring the awareness to our past actions, which he's right, that could be pretty hard, but to have the balance and give ourselves that pat on the back for those times that we actually were helpful and brought more light in. That is a really, I think, whole and complete message. I don't know. What did you think?
I thought the same thing. And it really is a unique way of talking about a spiritual lesson. And as he's talking, I'm thinking about sitting in that theater, looking at everything I've done and starting to go, oh no.
Oh.
But it is so important that he emphasized that we include the things we did that were beneficial and not the things that we beat ourselves up over, because we all have those. We all have both of those things in our lives. So, yeah, and like you said, it's good to get a head start on these things while we're still here on Earth.
For sure. That is a really interesting image, isn't it? If you think about sitting in that movie theater. Yeah, it really kind of brings it home. Our listeners might remember Heather McCutcheon from our other Reiki Courage montage episode. And Heather is a Reiki master teacher, and she has an interesting take on this question.
Understanding without a doubt that reincarnation is a thing. That's the paradigm that we're working with. We go through cycles of life and then time between lives, and we come back and we live again. So that has really lifted from me the pressure of YOLO. You only live once. You got to do it now. You got to get everything done. Stereotypically, expectations are that you would get married and have kids. And I'm not married and I don't have kids. And if I didn't have an understanding of, you know what, there are many times to come through this life and many different ways to do it. And this time, this is what I'm exploring. And I need my time and energy that would be devoted to a family because I'm using it outward in my other spiritual projects. I don't feel competition and I don't feel an urgency for accomplishment. I feel more like when you wake up in the morning and you're like, it's a new day. I'll do the best I can. I'll get done what I can get done and I'll leave the rest for another time. And I feel that way about my life as a whole. And that's really taken some of the pressure off in terms of accomplishments or keeping up with other people or whatever. So it's brought me peace of mind. As part of my exploration, I went to a Brian Weiss workshop, and he's the author of Many Lives, Many Masters, specifically done a lot of work around reincarnation. At the workshop, I thought I was there to hear him give a talk. And very shortly, like 10 minutes in, he said, find a spot on the floor and get comfortable. And he did a past life regression for 300 people in the conference room. And then we went to lunch and we came back and we did it again. He talked me through my birth, where I had a very visual scene of my mother and father in the hospital after I was born. And then through a previous life and experiences there that really resonated with who I am as a person now. And then talking with guides between lives about the learning that had taken place in that lifetime. And all of that happened in the space of, I don't know, a 10-minute regression. And it was this incredibly real experience. It was full color, it was full emotion, and it completely resonated with me in terms of the person that I am now. And I was there with a friend and she had a similar, we talked about it over lunch. This is what happened for me. So that was a really incredible experience. But also in working with my clients, I've had experiences where I just saw faces flash in front of me. And it would be like a British woman, an Eskimo man, an elderly Asian person. And I know that these are all their past lives that I'm witnessing, and we're addressing an issue that has persevered throughout these lifetimes. I just intuitively know that that's the case. So between all of that, I'm like, okay, this is how this works. And it's just been really helpful for me.
Well, Andrea, as you know, I have been trained as a past life regression therapist. So everything Heather said, I am completely 100% on board with. Reincarnation is real. And I think the evidence for that is overwhelming. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all I have to say on the matter.
Like you, Kathleen, I completely agree that reincarnation is a thing. And I didn't always think that either. So I appreciate hearing Heather's story about how she came to that. I always love hearing how people have their aha moments or how their journey unfolds to greater understanding. So I really liked her story about going to that workshop.
I agree. I too enjoy hearing about people's light bulb moments. It's always interesting how it happens. You know, the universe pretty much points us in the right direction and boom, there it is.
Ready to skyrocket your spiritual growth in 2023? Archangel Metatron's magical 21-day meditation challenge will help you learn to have two-way dialogues with your angels, opening the doors to possibilities beyond your wildest dreams. Yes, you can channel angels. They will inspire, uplift, share healing energy, and more. You'll be amazed at how your life will transform with the support of your angels. Head over to deboralupien.com/21 now for all the details, and you can find a link to that site in our show notes.
And now we'll hear from Jofa M. Kaufman, who you may remember as a guest on our show discussing numerology and paranormal exploration. Listen as she shares her spiritual lesson.
It's the fact that I have a predestined life purpose, as I believe everyone does. And these came to me over a period of time of self-examination and self-exploration. And I did that through using all sorts of different modalities in spirituality and metaphysics, and a lot of my own personal meditation. I'm a very organized person. So I literally spreadsheeted all of these different modalities and what they told me so that I could do a comparison to see if there is any commonality throughout them. I think what really shocked me more than anything was when a very gifted hand analyst, all she did was look at my handprints, came up with the same information that all these other modalities did that were using my name, my date of birth, very common things that they all referred to. That really reinforced to me that, yes, there is some sort of predestined pattern to our life and predestined purpose. Because if it's written in our hands, our name, our date of birth, and they all coordinate, I was really fascinated and almost flabbergasted that my hand could give the same message. I just believe that we all have a very deep purpose. The fact of reincarnation and coming back to learn lessons and to provide a purpose in our life have really resonated with that since I did all of this research with these various modalities. I use that every day now because I feel that I truly am on the right path, that I'm living my life purpose.
Kathleen, I think Jofa really brings up another one of those revelations that so many people come to on their spiritual path a little bit earlier on. And she even mentions reincarnation. And I think purpose and reincarnation, those two areas of study, those two concepts really do go hand in hand.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Andrea. And because of the fact that we do return and we reincarnate, we come into body with a life purpose, with the soul plan. So reincarnation and purpose are inextricably linked throughout our lives. It's just that it takes us sometimes a while to realize that. And when we do, everything seems to open up.
Yeah. And when you're talking, Kathleen, I have to remind myself, not everybody even realizes that. I sort of forget that.
So true.
Yeah. But a lot of people will never come to these realizations.
Exactly right, Andrea. Everybody's on their own path. That's the way it is.
Kathleen, let's share Dave Markowitz with our listeners once again. And they may remember him from a recent episode all about empaths.
I think one of the more powerful lessons I've learned along the way is what everyone, or I should say, the better spiritual teachers have been trying to teach. But at some point, something becomes more visceral, in other words, more wisdom than knowledge, and embodied, rather than just kind of thinking or knowing about it mentally. And for me, and I think this is pretty common, and I think it's part of the function of the ego, is to be very judgmental of others. Even though we've heard many traditions say, don't judge others, okay? I just think it's kind of normal. And I learned at some point, not only is it just not nice, but it's actually a reflection of what's going on within myself. So if I am angry at someone, and regardless of what their particular substance is, if I'm judging someone for what they're saying, well, is it what they're saying? Potentially, but is it the fact that they're speaking their truth? And I had yet to learn how to do that. So there's a lot of layers to that judgment. If you think about it, it's really kind of arrogant to judge anyone else, which I get in some circles is the norm, but I don't really feel those people are very healthy and not really in their hearts. And it doesn't mean that we're all not going to have moments of that, but it's not about never judging others, just like it's not about never having a negative thought. And there's a lot of negatives in that, but I think I already got it. Just to make it more digestible, there's a lot of practice that say don't think anything negative, just focus on the positive. That's just unrealistic, bottom line. And granted, if you're only in the negative, you want to look into it. But I think we do need to be able to flow with the so-called positive and so-called negative with more ease than we typically do. Part of it because we learn to judge those so-called negative parts of self, those shadow parts, anger, fear, grief, etc. I've learned to actually embrace those. That They're there for a reason. Everything has a reason. If I can embrace my own judgments, embrace the judgmental part of myself, I actually become less judgmental. Whereas because we're told not to judge, that invites self-criticism every time we judge someone, right? Like, what's wrong with me? Why did I judge it? Right? And I get it. It makes sense. And there's the deeper challenge, I think, of looking at it from a bigger perspective, questioning it. Is it even true? And also allowing it. And what's also really challenging is verbalizing it into someone else. So I've had a lot of people say to me, I've never said this to anyone, but blank, blank happened, or I thought this and that and that. And I say, great. Thank you for verbalizing that, because what we often do is have such judgment about our so-called negative thoughts. They actually begin to fester and get louder and louder and get more energy. But when they're spoken, not just embraced within the self, but I think the extra level is when they're spoken and heard and seen and not judged by someone else, there's a lot of power in that. And I really feel a lot of times that's a big part of the healing, is to allow space for everyone to have whatever experience they're having, no matter what their mind tells them to do or not to do.
Andrea, Dave has a way of getting right to the heart of things and saying it in a way that is just so eloquent that, I don't know, I just can't speak that way. And I really appreciate listening to him. And what I got from his answer is that we really need to continue working on ourselves, especially those shadow parts of ourselves. We all have them. No amount of love and light and only think positive thoughts is going to make those go away. I think it's about embracing the dark as well as the light. And in so doing, we can then move closer toward wholeness and wellness. That's what I got from what Dave had to say. What did you think?
I agree, Kathleen. And I would say whenever I listen to Dave, I find myself at peace whenever I listen to him, because I think he approaches everything from a balanced perspective, a loving perspective, and he makes everything seem okay. I don't know how I could say it any differently, but I just so appreciate his perspective and the fact that he seems to hold space anytime we talk to him.
He does, and he does it effortlessly. And I really appreciate that.
Kathleen, after recording more than 50 episodes with you, I would be very curious to know what great spiritual lesson from your own life you'd like to share on this episode.
That's an interesting question, Andrea, because of all the conversations we've had, I don't think we've ever talked about this. I don't think it's ever come up. So I was contemplating this yesterday, as a matter of fact. I came up with what I wanted to talk about and what my spiritual lesson is. And to my surprise, most of the people that we had on the episode today tie right into that. That's no accident, of course. Everything is purposeful. So my spiritual lesson is we are all eternal. We are eternal, period. And I mean that in a very literal sense. Our human bodies are not eternal, of course, but our essence, our soul, our spirit, our energy is. And I learned that lesson probably close to 30 years ago. And from that, everything else flowed. It was after that epiphany where I began to understand the importance of gratitude and understand the nature of oneness and non-duality and connection and patience. All those things, they all came for me from the realization that we are eternal. And of course, that plays into reincarnation, because we are eternal, even though our human bodies are not, but we get the chance to do it over and over again until we've learned everything there is to learn. And what an awesome experience that is. it's just such a gift. So for me, that's what it all came down to, realizing and knowing a very deep truth that we are eternal.
And can you share a little bit more, Kathleen? You said you had an epiphany. I'm wondering if you could share what that was.
Yes, I will. And a lot of times these epiphanies happen in the most trivial, mundane types of situations. And I wish I could say it was when I was sitting on a mountaintop meditating with monks, but no, it wasn't like that at all. I was working and I was in the office and I happened to walk by an office door that was open and two of my coworkers were in there talking with each other. And as I walked by, I heard one of them say something about reincarnation. That was the word I heard. And I stopped. I absolutely, and surprising even to me, stopped dead in my tracks. And my head swiveled toward the office door. And it was like the lightning bolt, like, oh my goodness, I need to know more about this. And even though I had heard of reincarnation and, I've heard the jokes about it, people laughing about it, how ridiculous, all that. But that moment in time was when it just hit me. I need to look into this. And I did with a vengeance. And that's when I started reading and researching and anything I could get my hands on about reincarnation. And this was before the internet. I'm really dating myself.
Mm-hmm.
So this actually involved going to libraries and getting books out.
Whoa.
And yeah, I know. Like, wow. How old are you anyway? Old enough. But anyway, I just took off. It was just, this is what I need to know. And once that truth really came to live in me about reincarnation, the fact that we are eternal, is when my spiritual path took off. And it was that one word, random, quote unquote word by a coworker that did it.
Well, I think that is a pretty pivotal story. I think that meets the bar as pretty exciting. For myself, I don't have that aha moment to really share. For me, thinking about this episode, and oh my goodness, so many spiritual lessons along the way. I'm sure you had trouble deciding what you would share. And I guess I'd like to share that I realized that we're whole and complete right now. And that we just don't perhaps have the perspective of seeing ourselves in that way, but that doesn't make it not true. And we can shift and change our perspective to see more of the truth of who we are. And to me, that's what the spiritual path is all about, is removing the blinders little by little and realizing so much of what I believed was really illusion. Moving out of that and embracing the fact that I'm whole and complete really helped reconcile so much of what bothered me growing up. And so as I embraced that about myself, the ripple effect is you start to see other people like that too. And that, to me, is phenomenal because there's so much hope then. There's so much connectedness. There's so much unity that you now see as possible because you see that people are so much more alike than they are different, because the differences are just maybe roles that we play in this lifetime, and little illusions that we've agreed to along the way to lift in conscious awareness, to see a bigger picture. To me, that has been the most transformative thing that I think I've ever learned. I wish I had a light bulb moment to share, but for me, it's been pretty gradual. It does inform really every day of my life and everything that I do.
That's lovely. It doesn't have to be a light bulb moment. Sometimes these things just wiggle their way into our consciousness over time. Regardless of how it happens, it happens. That's what matters. And what you said about perspective, so true. I talk about this a lot with clients and people that I know are open to hearing it, is that shifting perspective. And that happens over time too, doesn't it? It doesn't happen instantly. You're not all of a sudden seeing things from a soul perspective. It takes practice and it takes a willingness to be open and to change and to grow. So I think it's lovely that you have that sense that we are all whole and well right now, because we are.
And it goes right into, what you were saying about being eternal, because we are that as well.
Yes, we are. And don't you think it's interesting how what you and I are talking about dovetails so beautifully with everything that our guests discussed?
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. As we say a lot, everything is purposeful, right?
Yes. And the other thing, too, that strikes me is we always say, because we completely believe it, is that all paths are beautiful and everybody makes their way in whatever avenues or modalities or belief systems work for them. As you can see from the different guests that we've had and the different perspectives, there's a commonality there, and everybody is having the experience that is completely resonant with who they are, where they've been, and where they're going. And I just think it's so exciting to be able to hear people, their stories, and to be able to share them too.
I do too. And the commonalities among all the guests' answers and what we are now talking about is striking. And I'm reminded of the great and the only Ram Dass, who said, "We're all just walking each other home." I love that quote. And it's so true.
It is. I love that. What a wonderful way to wrap up the episode, Kathleen. Oh, we just want to thank all of our listeners. You can find links to all of the guests featured in this montage episode down in the show notes. And we'd love to hear from you. You can head over to beyondthereikigateway.com and sign up for our newsletter, or leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget, we're now on YouTube. Catch the episodes over there, publishing every Wednesday. Until next time. We thank you again for joining us. And of course, we invite you to join us next time as we journey beyond the Reiki Gateway with Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy.